I'm Abby Rossellis. I'm the Assistant Director of the Arts Nonprofit Public Sector and Career Services. So I want to start off with saying a few acknowledgments, a few thank yous. I promise there won't be a word-length speech. The music will play on, I promise. But first and foremost, I wanted to thank the students. Thank you so much for coming out today. It's really great to see all of you here, especially my seniors. I know some of you are in thesis life right now, maybe celebrating the end or kind of saying, why are you doing this to me on Saturday? I've got so much to do. But your time is really valuable, and I thank you for coming. I also want to thank the students for the past 3 years who have been writing lovely articles and coming in the office to kind of critique what we do for the creative careers. We're listening, I promise. And I say this with a big smile on my face because I really have been trying really hard to kind of bring things to the front with creative careers, and I encourage you to take this invitation to come into the office to meet with me or our new executive director, Coolin. We're going to be really focused on the student-facing piece, and your opinions really do matter. Trust me, I've been listening to you come in all the time and tell me how to do my job, so I really want you to give me your ideas, and I'll really help them come to life. It's also really great to see this kind of come to play with the different constituents on campus. So the Lewis Center's here, and they're facilitating the 2 panels today. This is just the beginning of our collaborations, and I really want to thank Christina and Michael for coming out today on Saturday as well and facilitating the panel. But also my staff, my career services staff, were working on a Saturday. Kathleen Manheimer, she's our senior associate director. It's her birthday today, so she's working on her birthday. Happy birthday. So if you guys know her or work students, if you've worked with her, just kind of shoot her a happy birthday. I think she'd appreciate it. But most importantly, the alums and the panelists that came all the way out from LA or New York to be here today. We talk about in career services, figuring out your journey, especially with my creative students that come in. There's no direct path. There's really no set way or organized way for you to kind of go into that recruiting zone. We talk about figuring out your story, getting experiences that will help you develop your story, and starting your journey. So the alums here today are going, and the panelists are going to be sharing their words of wisdom and their advice. But really, I cannot thank the Wibberleys and DiGilio, like, from the bottom of my heart. When I got an email from the Wibberleys, and it was labeled, I can't even remember how it was labeled, but it was like, parents of senior wants to speak with you. That reaction was like, oh no, what did I do wrong? But it was probably one of the best conversations I've had in 3 years. To really, for her to kind of say, what does career services do from a parent perspective, and how can we help? We have got this great set of resources, we have great friends, great networks, and what can we do? And they pulled in Dave, and all of a sudden, I mean, they pulled this panel together. These 2 sets of panels, so you should really thank them as well, to kind of just tell the story and do everything. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the event today. There's going to be 2 panels, so housekeeping events. There's 2 panels. There's the creative panel. We'll have a 15-minute break to just switch out to the producers panel or the business panel. And then you get FaceTime with everyone from 3 to 5. So I hope you guys take advantage of it. There are bistro tables out here, and there's also bistro tables in this other room. So I encourage you to utilize this space because I know there's a lot of you, and it'll get loud out there real quick. So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Hi. Can you hear me? All good? Excellent. So welcome everybody, and again, thank you guys, thank you so much, and thank you to the Lewis Center and Career Services. And I'm delighted to welcome all of you here in my dual role as an alum and also as a representative of the screenwriting work we do here at Princeton. Just a brief sense of where we're at this juncture. It's a very special year for us because now we can actually officially say that we offer 6 screenwriting courses a year through the creative writing program. And it's also our first year where we have thesis students working on their screenplays as part of the program. So this feels like a perfect moment to have this conversation. And I would just say that to all of you, maybe we can remember that maybe not everyone in the audience has working knowledge of terms and terminology as we talk about stuff, and also that we all love stories, so we want to hear your stories. And anything that you can share with us. So starting on, I would love to just go around and get a sense of who everybody is, and in general, what was your path that drew you to writing, to screenwriting, to this particular crazy form, and what do you love about it?
Cool. I'm Dave DiGilio, class of '96. I was a psychology major with a theater certificate, and I started out in Hollywood in 1999. I actually graduated and took a year to just travel and gather stories, and then lived in San Diego for a couple of years, working as a playwright, and then made the move to LA. Started out working as an assistant for a Princetonian, so Princeton can help. I'll tell a little story about that maybe later. Currently I work in film and television. I typically develop a TV show each year, and then we'll also work on 1 or 2 screenplays, usually for the studios each year.
I'm Will Staples, class 2000. I was a politics major and did investment banking for a year after school, never did any writing or anything like that at Princeton. And then a year into the investment banking thing, I was like, this is not for me. Packed up a U-Haul. I knew Dave through my sister. Dave said, I heard there's a job fetching coffee for this guy. You're not qualified for the job. So I clawed, scratched, and got that job. And then just been writing ever since. I work mostly in film, also some video games, and then some TV stuff as well.
I'm Tim Herlihy. Adam Sandler was my college roommate. And I was an accounting major, an accounting and international business co-major at NYU. Worked as an accountant for a year at Mobil Oil, and then I went to NYU Law School and worked as an attorney in Lower Manhattan. All that time I was sort of as a hobby helping Adam out with stand-up material and then sketches, and it eventually kind of snowballed into a tryout at Saturday Night Live, which was 20 years ago this month, and I've been I quit the law firm and been writing movies and a little bit of TV ever since.
I'm Jeff Lowell. I did not go to Princeton. I hear good things about it. It's all I ever wanted to do was write, and here's my crass commercial story. I went to college and thought, what kind of writer will I be? And went and got a book at the library, one of the only times I think I went to the library, and looked through. I'm like, ooh, TV writers make a lot of money. I'm going to do that. So my lovely girlfriend, now wife at the time, was working. She was going to school in LA and stole some scripts for me and sent them to me. And I just started writing and moved out there sort of foolishly with no other plans but to make it, and have been working ever since. I think I broke in. Oh God, it's 20 years. I'm old. What happened?
Hi, we went to UCLA, and I was a math major, and Cormac was economics, and we were both working our way through school. He was a creative executive. You can jump in anytime. I don't want to speak for you.
Writing partners? I don't have to talk.
I graduated, got my math degree, and I was going to apply to grad school, and I had the film school application, and I said, you know what, I kind of want to study film instead, and I applied and I got in. He was working at ABC as a creative executive. In the day, we only had cartoons on Saturday, and so he was a Saturday morning cartoon executive, and so he knew sort of the creative executive business, and he would always work on scripts with me, and I said, you know, let's just write something together. And we didn't sell it, but we got a lot of people to read it, and we got a lot of input, and then we wrote something else and we sold it, and that's how we started, and quit his job, and rest is history.
Working for over 20 years.
We're
old too. Hi, I'm Albert Kim, class of 86, which, as my daughter helpfully pointed out, makes me the oldest one here, I think. I was an English major, but I was pre-med and expected to go to medical school. Took the MCATs, did the whole deal. I should have known when the highest score on my MCATs was the writing section. But I decided not to go to medical school and instead went into journalism because I had worked for, I'd done nonfiction writing here, and worked for the Nassau Weekly for 4 years. Is Nassau Weekly still around? Okay. So I worked there for 4 years, went into journalism, started at Sports Illustrated, spent about 6 years there, went to Entertainment Weekly, back to SI, and then my last magazine job was at People magazine. And I thought that I was going to stay safely in journalism for the rest of my career. And then around 2005, ESPN came and offered me a job running a show for them in LA that was about sports and entertainment, which I took. And then the week we got out to LA, the head of the network left. And the new president came in and promptly canceled all of his predecessor shows, including mine. So that was my introduction to television. But while I was in LA, I'd always been interested in TV writing, so I found myself with the unique opportunity of being there with some time. So my agent got me a meeting with an FX drama that was starting at the time called Dirt, which starred Courtney Cox as a magazine editor. So they hired me as a technical consultant, which involved advising them on everything from the sets to writing little bits of dialogue, but most importantly got me into the writer's room. And they offered me a script, and I joined that staff. And I've been working ever since, the only hiccup being the writer's strike, which killed that show. But actually gave me the time to come up with my own writing sample, which then helped me get my next job at Leverage. And currently I'm working on a Fox drama called Sleepy Hollow.
Great, thank you. So this is how you started. So can you tell us a little bit about what keeps you going? What do you love about this form, and what keeps it fresh for you?
Oh, me? Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing about being a storyteller is you are compelled to do it. Like, literally, you're compelled to do it. And I would do it whether I was getting paid $1 or getting paid what I make now, which is a little more than that, and it's all, one and the same. I think the thing that I always draw upon is my experience actually here at Princeton, and that constantly plays a big part into it. I was a lightweight rower here for 4 years, and I kind of jokingly tell people I'm meeting that I learned as much about entertainment in the boathouse as I did at 185 Nassau, which it was called back then. But really that kind of masochistic, I can take anything, any amount of pain and frustration, that's huge. That's a big part of being able to make it through a Hollywood career. You couple that with that just flat out desire to, back then I was an actor and used to love to get on stage. But really, I just love to tell stories and love to tell stories to an audience. And Hollywood's kind of the perfect combination of those two things that make up who I am.
Yeah, it's sort of along your lines about the career. It's like I was taking these sailing lessons, and I was asking the guy, so does it ever actually make sense to buy a boat? And he said there's only one circumstance. He said if you're going to wake up every day for the rest of your life unhappy you don't own a boat, then buy a boat. I think writing is sort of the same thing. Like, it's not a rational career path when you look at the risk reward. It's but if you're compelled to do it and you love it, I don't think there's a better job for an individual. I mean, for me, I love the research aspect of it. I love going into really interesting subcultures, whether it's learning about cutting edge science or special ops or whatever it is, dog sledding in Alaska, whatever the subject matter may be. Getting just exposure to so many things and having a learning curve that's always so steep. And it's also, writing is an incredibly complex craft, so you can be doing it for 10, 15, 20 years and still feel like there's so much more that you could be improving at, whether you're getting deeper characters or learning more about structure. There's always a new lesson to be learned, which I find really exciting.
I'm still shaken up about Cormac being the Saturday morning cartoon again. Do you know Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
I know Scooby. Try and get a grip on Scoob. He came in and pitched a couple times. I guess keeping it interesting, to keep it interesting, I've been doing it a long time, as everybody has, but on a superficial level, obviously, the movies, they sort of lead you to just the subject matter or what's going on, lead you to places, either you knew nothing about or maybe you wanted to know what, movie I was involved with last summer took place in Africa. Got to go to Africa, I got to learn a lot about Africa, and it was a life-changing experience. It was really awesome. And I'm doing a movie now about video games and learn a lot about that. But below that, it's kind of on a nuts and bolts level. I mean, as long as I've been doing it, I've never had the same problem twice in terms of storytelling, in terms of making something fit with characters, and you're thrown all sorts of different things, and the budget, you got to do this, and you want to fit these two scenes together, but you need some transitional glue, and it's never the same twice. And it's, if you like puzzles, you might like screenwriting.
I'm not fit for anything else, so I'm very lucky that I get paid to do this. There are very few jobs where if you don't take them seriously, that's an asset, and I think this is one of them. I think that sort of playful attitude is the thing that keeps it sort of fresh and interesting. And all I've ever done is comedy, and at the end of the day, if I make myself laugh and make people laugh, that's a good way to make a living. But to echo one thing that Will said, boy, if you don't need to do this, this is a tough career. I mean, if something else makes you happy, boy, I'd chase that. This is a
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really that. I mean, it is. It's tough on your ego. It's a brutal business, and even when you're successful, you still, then there's the reviews. You get a movie made, yay! But then you get the reviews, and you're like, oh, I suck. We suck.
And then it's the box office, and then, but we can do well in China.
So, but for some reason that keeps us going though, because you just constantly want to make people happy, and people come out of the theater. You see people going in theater to see your movie, and like, there's nothing better, and that feeds you for so long. So, that's probably why I do it. I think that's why you do it too.
I do it because you told me to do it.
I do it because Marianne told me to do it. For me, I think it's the variety. Personally, I had sort of like an intellectual ADD. I think that's what drove me into journalism, being able to sort of tell different kind of stories and dive into different kinds of worlds. I realized over the last 6 months, even as a TV writer, I've written stories about international spies, ancient Egypt, and now I'm deep into the arcana of the American Revolution. So I can't think of too many other professions where you can sort of dive into those topics really full bore for a period of time, and then sort of come out and go into something else. And that to me kind of keeps me going. The writing part of it sucks. It's really hard. It's sort of like Will said, the research and getting involved in those subjects that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and here we have a room full of people who are either just interested or are on their way, and I would just love to open this up. We heard from you, Dave, about the boathouse, but what other ways of preparation can we give these young people on their way?
Well, I could start with the film school way. I mean, just because I know it, and I felt a lot of people come to these things and they go, should I go to film school? Because I studied math. It's like, and then I went to film school. And did it make a difference for me? Well, yeah, it was fun going to watch movies every day in school. But I think the biggest part for film school for me was that I networked. So I met people, and so that helps. But now there's so many new ways of networking. So I think film school is really valuable, and I would do it again every time. I would always say, if you want to go to film school, go. There's nothing better. It's so much fun. But it's really the connections that you get out of it that is the lasting thing.
Would you say going to film school straight out of college, or waiting, or?
Well, I went straight out of college, so I did. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do know that they accept a lot of people who come from very diverse that don't come right out of college either. So I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. So.
But I'd say you're in the minority of
Agree.
I mean, certainly
Agree.
some people come through, and the networking and look, if you can afford to take a couple years and play and write screenplays and make movies, it's a wonderful thing. But when I was breaking in, I sort of used the brute force method of just writing a lot of scripts and sending a lot of letters. And I sent a letter to a writer who was on Cheers, which was a TV show that was on before you all were born. And, and I asked him for advice, and he wrote back, he just sent my letter back to me, and on the top wrote, "Writers write." And that's all he sent back to me. And to me, it was one of those right pieces of advice at the right time, which is, I would just finish one script and not agonize for a year, and people, and you get caught up and ask friends. I mean, write the next one. Keep writing them. Try to get to that one that's sort of lightning in a bottle. I'm not saying never write and do that, but produce material, because it's like anything else. It's an exercise and a muscle, and the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, one thing I would add to the film school versus non-art debate is there's something that people who are film school graduates have that I think for the rest of us, we struggle to keep up with, and maybe not all of us, but it's basically film and TV. It's a medium of reference. Like when you get out to Los Angeles and you get into meetings, people are going to be referencing movies constantly. Like, it's always, the idea is kind of taking something that's been done and twisting it 30% so it feels new and fresh, and oh yeah, I get that, that's just like that movie, blah, 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 right? And people I know who went to film school often have a very good encyclopedia of reference to go back to. So if you don't do the film school route, I would really encourage you to really educate yourself in the classics and the films of the 70s, the things that constantly come out.
Yeah, the great thing is
meetings.
these days, like, there are the DVDs and movies online, and you can get everything you want online. Like, when I was coming up, that was much harder. I didn't go to film school, but when I decided I wanted to get into TV writing, I read a ton of scripts, and that's the great thing about the internet these days. You can get pretty much anything you want online. I just sort of pored over scripts and studied their structure and broke them down and figured out exactly how the scenes worked and how the acts work. And then I just took out DVDs and sort of watched them and saw how the final cuts differed from the scripts, and looked at those as well. You can sort of create your own film school in a way that way these days. And I think you can tell from all the panels here, everyone has a sort of a different way into this business. That's what makes it kind of challenging, because there's no real set path to get into the business, as opposed to more traditional disciplines like medicine or law or business, where everyone knows exactly which way to go. And this way, it's a lot more challenging. But at the same time, it means that there's different ways in. There's lots of different ways in.
The only thing I'd add to that, too, is there's a way that people in Hollywood talk about story and think about story that you only learn being there and having a front row seat, photocopying stuff, fetching coffee, and reading script in the library and hearing people talk about 3-act structure and stuff. So you may go into it with a great film school education or as a really talented writer from a creative writing program, but that next piece, there's no way to get it besides just going and getting some lousy job at some company in Hollywood.
Good luck.
But it's awesome.
But it's also a difference between TV and features. I've done both, and the great thing about TV to me, and why I broke in there, was it seemed like there was more of a path where you could start as a staff writer, and they didn't expect too much of you. You had to have a little bit, and you could work. But features is sort of 0 to 100. I mean, you sort of have to walk in a room, and you're the only person. You have to be ready. So, if your passions are in both, sometimes TV can be. I mean, you start in TV. A lot of TV people up here. It is more of a standard path, in terms of you sort of work your way up. So it can be beneficial.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the difference between TV and features, and from a
TV's
writing
harder.
point of view.
It's faster.
It's harder, more hours.
They've done both.
Faster, harder,
They've done both, so they should.
No, I mean, and he's writing. His wife's Jenny's a good friend of mine. She's texting me last night going, "We're in the library. Albert's writing episode 7. We have a notes call."
Literally, TV is as you're turning the draft in, they're calling you to say they're setting up a notes meeting. So you're constantly turning something in, getting notes, turning something in, and it's like having a term paper, but you're always behind, a week behind.
So if you like that, if you like
that
features,
sort of pressure, and you're always behind, and you have to have it done. That's TV. And features, it takes you 10 years, and it's like, we'll get it done when we get it done. So we were used to writing features, and this all of a sudden we have a deadline. We have to have it done by Friday. You're kidding, right? That's what TV is.
that's all we know. Go
And
ahead.
I actually want to ask a question to the group about film and TV. Just by a show of hands, who thinks the best writing is in television?
Leading question.
And who thinks the best writing is in film? Interesting. I mean, it's actually, I would say, there's a perception now in Hollywood that the best writing is happening in TV, yet you guys, I think most people raise their hands for film. So, that's a big debate that's going on out in Hollywood right now, is TV is becoming the kind of medium of the writer. The writer is the producer as well in TV. Jeff is creating a show right now. He is the big cheese. He is the guy. Whereas when Will and I, somebody had to talk to. When Will and I work for studios on a feature, we are pretty much like low guys on the totem pole.
Terrible, yeah.
I mean, we're like, we get traded out all the time. We go for the same job. I mean, this is cutthroat in film, and the life of a screenwriter on the feature side is very different. We do have more free time, which is nice on the feature side. When you're working in TV, I had a TV show, and I was working 100+ hours a week when you're running a TV show. But it's really interesting to see that the kind of notion that TV is starting to overtake film in terms of quality maybe isn't getting outside of the walls of the town yet.
A lot of it's because the mid-level movie has disappeared. The sort of smart. I mean, it's tough to make. You know, you can make a $600,000 Paranormal Activity that'll make money, or you make a Marvel movie. But those middle sort of smart adult movies have been disappearing, and they've moved to cable. I mean, you even look at True Detective. You get huge stars to commit to do 8 episodes and do something great and move on to do something else, and so it's sort of taken over what used to be the, I think that's why. I think, and writers get it, and writers do have control in TV. Nobody wants to give us control, believe me, but it's just because TV is a monster that devours writing. It devours material. So the only way to keep it going is to have somebody that can feed the monster. Whereas a feature is, they can mess around with a script for years before they shoot it, and then they take another year to shoot it, and so it's a director's medium because it's basically the writing's done till it does it. So that's the advantage of it.
One of the great payoffs of TV, it's true, is the turnaround time is so much faster, so you can actually see the results of your work in a matter of weeks rather than years in features, and that's good and bad. I remember one of my first seasons on Nikita, which used to shoot up in Toronto. It was about August or so. I was writing a script, and I wrote most of the script exterior night. And by the time we shot it, which was a couple of months later in November, I was so cold at sitting at exterior night in Toronto, and I'm texting my wife Jenny, and she's like, "Well, that's your fault, isn't it?" Never again. Every other episode that took place in the winter months was interior day.
Nice. So we have anyone else want to jump in on the TV side? Yeah. So we have this debate about the writing in features and TV, and we also have this new growing world of digital content and games. And I was just wondering who would love to talk about that aspect of writing, if you see differences in terms of opportunities that all of these people might be engaging with in the years to come, if there are different ways of entering that world. If someone can talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about the game thing since I've done a fair amount of that. I mean, it's the culture of games is completely different from the culture of film and TV because they come from the DNA is software, right? That's like the kind of companies that are making games versus Hollywood culture. So in Hollywood, people say, hey, best idea wins, but they don't really mean it. They mean my idea wins or my boss's idea wins. Whereas in games, it's like you can be working on like Call of Duty and the guy who is drawing the characters has a really good line. And it's like, wow, that line's better than my line. Let's put that in and we'll all look great. Whereas you don't really get that as much in features. There's a sense of like each person has their responsibility they're in charge of, and you don't really step on each other's toes. The other thing about writing in games is a game is successful if it's fun to play and fun to experience. So as a storyteller, you're trying to facilitate context that people want to interact in. Whereas when you're writing a movie, you're thinking, all right, what's the journey that this character is going to go on? How are they going to change over the course of this story? So that's very different. And you have to remember as a game writer that a game lives or dies on whether it's fun. Right? And so if you're coming up with a story that isn't making it more fun, then you're in real trouble. And so that's part of the art of it is saying, all right, what does a gamer want to do in this situation? And you might be play testing a game that's half finished and they'll realize that the best level in the game is 2/3 of the way through the game. So they want to reshuffle the deck and have that be the opening of the game because they want to put all the money on, when people first fired up, they're like, oh, we want explosions and stuff. And so like on Call of Duty, there were 17 missions, and they kept getting better and worse as they were being individually developed. So we had these note cards, and then we'd reshuffle the deck every time they'd play test them. And then it'd be like, all right, we want the story rebuilt so that what was the ending is now the third mission, and what was the third mission is now the ending. Oh my God. And so,
that sounds.
I mean, it's a really fun challenge, but it can be a little maddening. And then people are like, oh, why does the story suck? And you're like, so.
I'm curious from people on the panel, we all have new writers who will come to us for advice, and a lot of times you'll have someone who comes to you and says, yeah, and you'll say, what do you like? And they'll say, well, I like film and TV and games. And it's like, well, okay, they want you to help pick one to go after. And do you guys have one that you guys steer people towards, probably either film or TV, but like currently I've found it definitely hard for the people I've been helping on both sides. The TV world is probably maybe there's a little more opportunity with things like Netflix and Hulu, so there are new shows that are getting created, so maybe I've been kind of steering them that way, but what about other people?
I mean, I guess it's where their passion lies. I'd answer tangentially, whatever interests them, it feels like it's a path in. It's a slightly tangential story, but about the digital world. I did a pilot last year where there was a young woman who had a bad breakup with her boyfriend and went home and started a blog called My Kids Are Here. I'm in my 20s, and you know, she wrote for a few months, and every day she'd go and talk about how horrible her life was, and someone turned to a book, and NBC bought it, and they made it into a pilot, and I came in and wrote it, and those paths didn't exist. So I would say, you know, her talent was she had a great perception into the human condition and was a good artist, and sort of, you know, did these little doodles and put it out there and did it. You know, it's tough to say there's any path that needs to be adhered in any rigid form these days. I mean, it is such an amazing thing digitally what people can do for no money, which didn't exist for us. I mean, if we wanted to make a short, there was a guy who got a director who broke in with Shakespeare. It was a mixture of Shakespeare and George Lucas and Star Wars.
Shakespeare in Love.
Yeah,
No, it was George Lucas and
George Lucas
in
in
Love.
Love. And
that was a director, right?
Yeah, it was a director.
Director-writer, yeah.
A director-writer who made this short that got him a lot of attention. He got direct features from it. And I worked him on something. It cost him $50,000 to do it, you know, just because you shot it on film and you had to get a crew and you had to do a thing, and it was an incredibly arduous, expensive thing, and it paid off for him. But now, you know, you can do that for nothing. I mean, it feels like, you know, it's become wide open in a great way.
I mean, these days, people get TV shows off Twitter feeds. You know,
Yeah.
there are Twitter feeds that become successful enough, or people who have really popular Twitter feeds that get TV deals. So there are so many more ways and methods to get your
Because
writing
they're
out
funny?
there.
How do they
Because they're
get?
funny?
Yeah, okay.
You may have a lot of followers, right?
Yeah, if you get a lot of followers
Kind
and
of crossover.
okay.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, shit my dad says
Yeah.
was a Twitter feed, you know, and it was one good joke a day, and someone said, that's enough, let's make a show. And maybe that's not the best way, but did I sound bitter when I said that? I didn't mean to.
And we know that you guys work together.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about collaboration and working alone or working with other people, working alone or working with other people through different media and film and TV and all that. So the collective versus the solitary confinement.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's, you know, we're just so codependent that I don't know how I do it. To come home from a bad meeting, which most of them are going to be bad meetings. When you're in the car, you can be going, oh, that lady was awful, and I can't. Why were they so mean? And blah blah blah. You know, and he went through it with me, so it's easier to talk about. You know, so for us, it's just been it's that sort of we're on the same emotional roller coaster.
We have the advantage of in writers in our experience of being a writer. One day everything's great, and the next day everything sucks. So
what we've written
one of us,
is what he's talking about.
is writing, and so one of us will be, no, it's good. And, the other one's like, no, it sucks. And then so you have that person that kind of drags you through the day.
What he's saying is
So
he throws away the pages, and I dig them out of the trash.
So you can kind of get through those bad moments when you have partners. So.
But we have other friends that are much healthier partners than we are, who rely on the rules of improv,
Right.
To do what they do, which is say yes, but instead of no, like I don't know.
Always say
Yeah, yes. What is it?
Yes, and.
Yes, and yeah, but see, I already did it wrong.
It's called the hard
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
So if someone pitches an idea,
Yeah.
and you're not supposed to say that doesn't work, or but you go yes, and you build.
and you
on it.
build. Albert mentioned the writer's room, and a lot of people don't know what that means. But in television, there's this thing called the writer's room, which you guys can probably explain better. But a bunch of writers working it, someone leads it. These two guys are writer room. I think Dave led a writer room too, everybody. And usually they're low-level writers, right?
Sure.
A lot of them, and they're pitching ideas that are usually bad. But you try to get by not being too negative or being negative.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a lot quicker if instead of going yes and you just go no.
Because eventually you're going to get there. Yeah, in American television, it's built around writers' rooms, which are collaborative, and there's actually a pretty big difference between drama rooms and comedy rooms. Comedy rooms, from what I understand, can be a lot more cutthroat in terms of what happens, because everyone's trying to pitch the best joke or the best punchline, and it can get pretty competitive. Drama rooms these days, especially, they're getting smaller and smaller because the economics of the business are shrinking as well. But it's a way to sort of map out. Every show has a different chemistry in the writers' room, but it's a way to map out the course of a season, and then all the way down to breaking a particular episode, and then usually send a writer off to go do it on their own. But a lot of writers' rooms, comedy writers' rooms, from what I understand, everything can be written together, like the Chuck Lorre shows, the Big Bang Theory, and shows like that, where they basically write the whole script in the room, right?
Yeah, no, I worked on 2.5 Men this year, and nobody ever went off to do a draft. Everything, we come up with the story as a group, we write the story as a group, we rewrite the story as a group. I mean, it's taken draft writing completely out of the process, which is still really rare in comedy, but it works. He's got 4 shows on the air. It's not a bad system.
Did you do the thing with the big screen in the writers' room, and one person typed? And
Yep, and everybody yells out jokes, and the person in charge picks the good ones, and yeah, no, it is very cutthroat.
How big was that room?
This how many? Well, I think there are 10 or 12 writers. I don't really notice people, as you can tell. But it quickly, there are like the 6 good ones you keep in the main room, and then you make everyone else go do some busy work, and it's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible atmosphere. But on the other hand, you get paid to tell dirty jokes for a living, so there are worse things to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other side of it, on feature writing, if you're not part of a team, it can be profoundly isolating. Because, I mean, on the one hand, you have great authorial control. On the other hand, somebody's writing you a check. They're saying in 3 months, come back with a stack of paper that's great, and we don't care how you do it, but that's what we're paying you to do. And, those 3 months are filled with a lot of doubt, and you're waking up and going into a room by yourself that's quiet. And,
Drinking beers with your friends instead of working.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, it's... But I mean, I think there's a reason that like a lot of writers are depressed. I don't think they're necessarily drawn to it because they're depressed, but I think they get that way doing it.
Yeah, and then your collaboration is based on notes meetings in the feature world, and there's a thing in the feature world where people have to kind of justify their job. So you have to become very good at understanding what is a real note and what is a note that is being given to just give a note. And that happens a lot. You'll be in a meeting, and there'll be people who are trying to impress their boss, and they'll start in on a 5 or 10 minute thing that doesn't really matter. And you have to listen to them, and often you have to make sure that they feel heard. By the way, producers, I listen to all your notes here.
Oh wait, the producers are here.
They're hiding over there. But no, you really have to become very adept at being a good listener. I think it's a big part of being a writer, both in terms of how you get out there and gather your stories and your characters, but also in terms of how you work collaboratively in a room. And people in TV especially, I found this, will really note you a lot and try to get you to move off of ideas you're passionate about, and you have to stick to your guns. When you are dead certain something works, no matter what, you have to stick to it.
Yeah, you figure out what they're trying to tell you. They often deliver notes badly because they're not writers or creative types. So like one time I had a notes call, and an executive kept wanting to give this one character a parrot. What if you had a parrot? And then, when I finally have to call in sort of calm my rage, I kind of thought about it, and I figured out, they're just trying to give the character a little more quirkiness, some kind of individuality, something that makes them stand out. So then you can approach it your way as a writer and figure out, He doesn't need a parrot, he needs a weasel, or whatever. But, they'll try to come up with their own version of the fix, which is to give them a parrot, and you just have to figure out what they really meant.
Yeah, we call that what they want and what they really need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
you do
technology
what we
too
take care.
has really helped with collaboration. I was talking to somebody the other day who I had been collaborating with back in the day, and they said, yeah, I remember when I was reading the pages of the script as they came off the fax machine. Like, and now, I'm working on something now where I'm co-writing with someone who's in LA. We share the script on Skype, and I mean, you can hear a pin drop. It's a great audio connection. The director is working out of San Francisco. He has some elaborate AV setup where he can really talk to department heads and basically, I mean, he's not shooting yet, but basically do everything he needs to do from San Francisco. And you could really be anywhere in the world doing this stuff.
So this is a great segue just in terms of working off of notes and all that. Can we talk a little bit about the different aspects of personality and muscle really that goes into doing this line of work that is not necessarily just writing? And we can touch on pitching, we can explain pitching, we can talk about the interpersonal stuff a little bit more.
I had when I was trying to break in, I hadn't broken in yet. Warner Brothers had a program where you would apply, and if you got in, they would help you get on a show. And I went in for the meeting, and the executive said to me, writing in TV, but I think it's true in features also, is 10% talent and 90% personality. And at the time I thought, well, I'm screwed. But it is really true that on either side, the ability to work well with others keeps you coming back. I mean, if you go into a feature room and they give you a dumb note, there's a way to not go, no, that's dumb. There's a way to, you just sort of kick the ball down the field and go, let me think about it. I see what you're saying. I mean, being collaborative on either side is a trait that's almost more important than being good. Handling yourself in meetings, and we all know people who are talented writers but are just jerks. And I'm really editing myself for my kids. This is horrible. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and you have to learn to not take things personally, not react in the moment in anger. Be a pleasant person to be around because you want them to keep hiring you.
And also adding to that you don't have to be super charming like Jeff either.
No.
I honestly, if you're a good writer and you're not an asshole, I'm sorry, Jeff, all those kids.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do ask me that too. They're like, oh, I'm just really shy, it's really hard. I can write, and I choose to write because I don't want to talk to people. I want to work, and it's like that's okay as long as you can take a meeting. You don't have to be. Some of the worst pitchers are good writers, great writers. Like Ted Elliott's a good example. Pirates guy. He's so terrible in a room, but he's such a great writer.
But he had a partner who was, that was probably part of their
probably did help.
Terry,
Yes.
Terry
Yeah.
doesn't talk either.
Not helping me.
Every once in a while, he draws most of the time.
Nice.
But being able to be a professional person, just because you're writing in your pajamas doesn't mean that you don't have to be professional and be able to take a meeting and that sort of thing. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, on the sort of art commerce spectrum, it's like this is way at the commerce end. People are writing really big checks and making huge bets on these projects, and they're thinking about things that you're not thinking about. They have concerns about how they're going to get a return on their investment that you have to be sensitive to. So sometimes they say, look, we need a multicultural cast for this project because we're trying to do better in some of the markets, like South Korea or wherever, and you're thinking, well, I don't know why there would be a South Korean character in a Mexican cartel in Juarez. And it's like, find a way because.
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy who's involved with the Fast and the Furious franchise, and he was talking exactly about that. How when he goes on the press tour for that franchise, there is a different star for that movie in each country they go to. Like literally, the guy who might only have 10 lines is the star when they open that movie in South Korea. And I think in terms of your writing, this kind of goes back to what Jeff I think was saying earlier. that's where you really have to kind of stick to what makes you want to tell that story, what is driving you, and you kind of have to let them help you get through that. How am I going to figure out how to get that guy? Well, that's a good question. What do you think? And bring them into that conversation. But as long as it's something that you love that's driving that story, it's still going to work.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the best things you guys could do would be to take an acting class, or anyone who's interested in writing. It's easy. It helps you with characters and getting in characters' heads, and it also, it's like almost like a public speaking thing. You do need to be, even most writers are kind of introverted, but there's going to come a time when you're going to have to put on a song and dance, and you're going to have to be charming, or as charming as you can possibly sum up, and acting class might be a good place to start working on that skill.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Yeah, I mean, that would help us a lot. We need to do that.
So we wanna keep some time for Q&A, but as a wrap up for the panel side of things, I would love for you guys to talk a little bit about, is there an advice you would give your younger self if they were just starting in the business right now? Is there something in hindsight that you say, at that moment, that meeting, that story, if I could revisit, it would be different?
Take the job at Google. I don't know. I mean, I don't have many regrets. I mean, I was very happy. I came to Hollywood late. I guess, okay, this is one, which is I arrived in LA when I was 25, and I saw, a lot of my peers were 21, straight out of college, and I was like, God, man, why didn't I do that? Why did I go right out of school? And the fact of the matter is that no one really takes you that seriously until you're at least 25, maybe 30 in the business. And you have a wonderful opportunity when you graduate to go out and do something that will help you gather stories. And the fact of the matter is, now, that trip I took after graduating, that's where I really draw a lot of my inspiration. And a lot of my stories actually come from things that I did in those 2 to 3 years before I went to LA. Because when you get into LA, it is a machine. I mean, you really get into LA. So it's important. Like, Jeff actually lives in Charlottesville.
I do.
Tim, where are you?
Connecticut.
In Connecticut. So, you can reach a point where you can live elsewhere and write in LA. But before you reach that point, when you're starting out, once you get to LA, there's a long time where you have to be there and you have to do it. So take your time to get there, I guess, is my advice to my younger self.
Yeah, I think, one thing to keep in mind is it takes a long time to get really good, and everything you write will be much better than the thing before. And, look up some of your favorite writers who are consistently doing great work, and they're probably not some phenom in their 20s. They're somebody who's been around, and it wasn't like they were discovered at age 40. It was because they spent years writing crap and then okay stuff, and now they're amazing because they've spent so much time with such a steep learning curve getting great at what they do. And I'm not sure if it was Craig Mazin who said it, but one of the most profound things I've heard about.
It wasn't Craig then.
That wasn't Craig. But like talking about how basically there are 3 things like that make a successful writing career: talent, luck, and hard work. And there's this tendency to focus on whether you're talented or not, whether you're lucky or somebody else is getting more lucky. But hard work's the only one you can control, right? You're either talented or you're not. You're either going to be lucky or not. So work really hard and hope that you have the other 2.
Yeah, Will took my thing. So. Yeah, you really, I'm sure you all can write. And when I was 25, I thought I was great. I was. But you really, it's one of those things. Every 5 years, you look back and you're like, wow, I wrote that. When I pick up an old script, I can barely look at it. You learn so much by doing, and to the extent you can just, you need to have just an incredible work ethic, an incredible, while having respect and love for your words and your work, and pride in your work, and confidence, most of all, in your work. You need to be able to throw it away and just write some more, because that's the only way you can get good. Right.
Yeah. No, I what they're saying, it's and I said it before, it's the create, and I did it. I have no regrets, by the way. If I were to go to my younger self, I would go, good job, Jeff, you did it right. but it's because I wrote so much and got those 25 shitty scripts out of the way before I wrote the one that got me a job. So by the time I got there, I was, if not good, I was at least fast. And my wife is here and can vouch that that is my skill.
Yeah, I sometimes think would I have studied math if I knew that, because it was a hard degree, would I, do it again? I think I would, because it taught me to think analytically, and I think you have to think analytically to write a story. So I probably wouldn't change that.
Good job, younger self, too.
Yes.
Yeah, I have no regrets. I don't know what I would say to myself. I wouldn't listen anyway.
Well, as I said before, I didn't start working in Hollywood till later in my career, and I've done reasonably well since then. And I've often thought, well, I should have made the switch earlier. But then I realized later on that the only reason I sort of have done reasonably well since then is because of all the things I've done beforehand. Working in magazines and journalism and in a corporate environment gave me a lot of the skills I needed to work better and more efficiently in television. I knew how to go to meetings. I knew how to deliver pitches. I knew how to work with people, and I built up this bank of experience that helped out in breaking stories as well. The one other thing I would point out, not out of regret, but just as something you should probably be aware of, in Hollywood, especially with executives and producers, the turnover is really rapid and things change really quickly, and literally the person who is the assistant to an executive one day, in a year or two, will be running that department. So you got to be really nice and really careful and really polite to everyone. All the people, the person delivering your coffee is the one who's going to be greenlighting your script in a year. Honestly, it happens like that fast.
Yeah, I took 7 years off of TV, and when I went back 3 years ago, the meetings I was pitching to people who were the assistants before, and they're like, "You were always so nice to me." I'm like, "Thank God." I
had an assistant woman come up to me not that long ago and told me all the advice I had told her was so great and life-changing. It set her on this great course for life. I honestly couldn't remember who she was.
Yeah.
I did not write well, but.
That's nice.
Shall we open it up for some questions?
Not everyone at once. All right. You in the purple shirt.
I'm Azza. I'm a sophomore. I'm a history major. And a lot of the things you've been talking about, especially in the process, seem really cutthroat and kind of discouraging. And I was wondering what about...
Then we've been accurate. That's great.
But I'm wondering what in the creative and collaborative process gives you inspiration and keeps you going. Kind of like Professor Lazaridi's question before, but in the working with people or in the throwing out your scripts and taking them out of the garbage can and rewriting them, what about that is encouraging and keeps you going?
For me, it's the...
Should we repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Do you
great.
want to
Terrific.
repeat it?
We don't have to repeat the
Oh, we
question.
don't? Okay.
Let's-
Okay.
Yeah, excellent.
For me, it's the idea that we literally are not only telling stories, but we're examining the human condition. I mean, I was a psychology major, not because I had to be. I was a psych major because I love thinking about how the human mind works. And I kind of drive my agents crazy sometimes because they'll bring stuff to me and I'll just, no, but no, Dave, come on, this is a good one. It's because I don't find a singular question in that I have to answer. So that's the great thing about our job, is that even though you are dealing, I think, with a lot of tough obstacles, you're doing the same thing that probably is inspiring you to write your thesis. You just have to kind of pick and choose.
I mean, if you love movies and you love TV, that just keeps you coming back.
Yeah,
And that's what we all grew up loving, I'm sure, all of us, and we want to be part of it. And we're kind of up here to show you that you can be part of it if you want to be part of it. If it's the love of your life, we all made it, and so can you. And just know that you just have to just keep banging your head against the wall for a while, but you can get there.
Yeah, we haven't talked about production at all, but I mean, I think that's the answer to your question, is for all the nonsense you go through, sometimes you're lucky and you get your movie made or you get your TV show made, and you get to see actors who bring things you didn't expect, and you get to hear an audience laugh or cry or whatever it is. You get to see your name on the screen. That's remarkable. I mean, I think that's why we all do it, is when it comes together and you get that lightning in a bottle and you make something great. I'm waiting. But that's what it's all. That's the payoff.
Yeah.
And it's really fun too. I mean, you get to live in these imaginary worlds of your own design, right? So it's like I might be interested in genetics and Navy SEALs or something, and then all of a sudden you create some story about bioengineering and special operations, and you spend 3 months, thinking about what that world looks like and what's happening in that world and who are these people and how can I deliver something with these characters that we've never seen, and it's really fun going into your own head each day, or can be. Sometimes it can be really dark and strange. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What are the nuts and bolts of a good pitch?
That's a good question.
Great question.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
The first thing is brevity. I've seen a lot of very good stories just kind of die in pitch because they go on too long.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing, going back to what Tim said earlier, taking an acting class is the fundamental best thing you can do to prepare for a pitch. It's very much like getting up on stage and performing a part. A lot of times you're doing multiple roles. But good structure, good presentation, and brevity, I think work very well in pitching.
Sometimes also making it all things to all people can help. Like if you say, this is Apocalypse Now for the Call of Duty generation, right? Like someone can be like, oh, I loved Apocalypse Now. Like it was like psychological, interesting, deep. And other people are like, oh, I love guns and explosions and making money. That's another little trick of the trade.
Yeah.
But I think if there's your sentence, if you can boil your idea down to 1 to 3 sentences, and that sentence is interesting, and then if you can always go back to the pitch. If the kernel of your idea is captivating, the pitch will usually be captivating. I mean, if you don't have an idea at the core that suggests scenes and acts and all these things, then you're going to be struggling uphill. I think it really comes down to that little nut of an idea, because that's how they sell it to their bosses to get it made. That's how they sell it to an actor to get them interested. That's how they sell the movie with a poster. I mean, you really need to have an interesting kernel to make a pitch great, I think.
One that works.
You're talking to people that had executives fall asleep during their pitch.
Right.
We went out with a pitch, and it was a 45-minute pitch.
Oh, it was terrible, and they fell asleep.
Because writers get caught up in the minutiae. So what they're saying is you just have to boil it down to sell the sizzle, like they say. And we got passed on by everyone on this pitch, and then we wrote the script, and the script sold.
But the
pitch was so bad. I think we lost fans.
But we learned a lot.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was always Die Hard. It was Die Hard in the White House. It was Die Hard in it. Now, the surefire way to sell something is it's National Treasure on the Moon, or it's National Treasure.
Yeah. Which you couldn't pitch nationally.
Yeah.
I think all pitches are different, especially between feature and TV. They're different, and writers get really superstitious about what works and what doesn't. So I know a writer friend who, because these days a lot of times people will come in with audio-visual aids and big posters, and I know a writer who brings his own boombox and has a soundtrack to his pitch.
Oh my God!
Like a friend of mine sold a pilot when he had brought in a big whiteboard and sort of outlined some things on the whiteboard. And since then, he brings that to every pitch, even though he doesn't bring it into the room. He just has the whiteboard with him. It's just looking. But it's the heart of that is like you gotta get to something that makes you feel confident enough to go in there, because it's all about feeling confident and knowing that you understand what your pitch is and what your material is, and giving the executives the confidence that you can pull this off. I mean, that's a really big deal, at least in the TV world, that they're going to be trusting you with all this money to do something, so they want to know that you can actually pull that off.
So you have to have the writing sample in order to sell the pitch.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Usual Suspects was sold with the poster, I think. That was another visual representation of, and the writer, I think people knew who he was, and then they brought in the poster and they sold the foreign rights based on just a visual. So, but you knew what the movie was by looking at it. So again, talk about a succinct picture. Anyway.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm a senior in the English department, and this is actually for you, David. I was wondering, what made you give up playwriting and start to pursue screenwriting? My first year taking screenwriting and television writing classes with Christina.
All right. Are you is Bob, or did Michael put you up to
Bob's
that?
Hey, Bob. And I didn't know he was in the room until now.
It's a good segue.
Thank you.
I brought this. This is my thesis.
Right.
That goes. I take it everywhere. But this for me was kind of a great launching pad in transition from playwriting into screenwriting. The truth is, I actually, since the age of 9, wanted to go into film. Back when I was growing up, it was hard to make films, and so I did a lot of theater. When I did this thesis, I actually did a lot of multimedia work in the play. And I started to think about playwriting in a very visual manner, and I realized, oh man, okay, the transition has begun. And so I actually worked for 2 years as a playwright in San Diego, but at that time I started writing my first real screenplay. And it was all about kind of getting ready to make the leap. So did I answer that? I don't know. You know, I always knew that screenwriting was going to take over. I do there's a lot of things I miss about the theater. I mean, the collaboration side of theater is much more like a family than either film or TV. But I think really the thing that probably tipped the scales eventually is just imagination. I love world building, and it's one thing to do that on the stage, but then it's another to actually see, as Will was saying, this world you created come to physical life on screen.
Just admit you wanted to make more money and move on. That was a convoluted answer to. You wanted to eat. Wow. Seems simple. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you carry your thesis everywhere?
Everywhere.
Yeah. Just a few years ago when we moved to LA, we were packing up and I found my senior thesis. I majored in English and I wrote my senior thesis about literary theory. And I opened it and looked at it. I couldn't understand a word of it. Because I've gotten so much dumber since then. Yeah. So for a lot of you, this is as smart as you'll ever be.
Come on.
That's not inspiring. I was wondering if any of you could speak towards working with composers, either in film or in television. I know that none of you are composers.
No, but we all work with music people. I mean, especially television. Music is a huge part of post. And we did try to get a music person for this panel because we say script to screen, everything in between. We missed the editors and the music, and there are so many.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everything in the
There's so right. But you don't show a cut of your film without even a pretend what's called a temp track. You steal it from Gladiator.
Gladiator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's super important. There's a million jobs. More because you guys work in television, but there's a million people working in post that are having something to do with music. They're either finding needle drops, which are the songs that you buy for a lot of money to put in your Grey's Anatomy, or just musical cues, or.
Yeah, I found when I was working with composers, I don't know enough about music to give them direct music notes, but I had an epiphany when I was working with another producer, and you direct them sort of the way you direct actors. You go, you want to feel hopeful here. You want to feel, this is a tension beat here, and then they'll interpret that, and then they use that to construct their scores, and then they'll send you the tracks, and then you can give them further notes. But you don't need to be a music expert if you know emotionally what you're going for within scenes and within an episode.
Should we do one more?
Should ask that to the producers too.
Yes.
Again. My question is a little bit directed towards Albert, but if anyone else can answer it, that would be great. I'm specifically interested in documentary film and also journalism, and I'm wondering about the shift from writing, I guess, what is true stories and what are based on people's real lives, and shifting it into fiction.
I found that people ask me that a lot, especially journalists who are looking at the transition. I find that certain skills are applicable. The sense of storytelling is the same. Writing a lead in a journalism piece is a lot like writing a teaser or an opening scene for a TV episode or a movie. You sort of want to grab people's attentions and get them excited and move the story along. Those kinds of things are all comparable in both genres. I found the biggest difference between journalism and writing fiction essentially was that journalism at heart is in the end about the conveying of information. In the end, any kind of journalism piece, you're getting across some essential fact. And TV, movie, fiction writing is at heart conveying emotion. You're trying to get some kind of emotion across. There's sometimes you do transfer information, especially if you're talking about documentary filmmaking, but it's a little bit of and this is a broad generalization, of course, but it's a little bit of the difference between brain and heart, between the two fields. So once you kind of understand that about writing fiction and writing screenplays, that made things a lot easier for me.
I will say, if you're adapting a true story, which I've done, unless it's JFK, nobody cares if you stick to the truth, even if it says based on a true story. If it doesn't, it's all about the story. And toss anything out. And there's so many movies you see, and you're like, oh, based on true stories, must happen. It literally, your only responsibility once you're doing that is to write a captivating movie. It's not to documentaries exist, journalism exists to tell the truth. Once you're adapting something, it's all about the experience. You don't get brownie points for putting something boring that's true in it.
Although my son, who's an engineering student, was really annoyed by gravity.
Yeah. but that's 0.1101. You don't worry about that.
It seemed like it was real.
Yeah.
Was it not?
Hey, research.
Thanks.
Anyone else? One last question.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm Danielle. I'm a sophomore in the Years and Studies major. One of my questions is, what tips have you picked up along the way after you have been rejected in any form of the sense of script writing?
Well, our favorite one, I think it's in the book, is you're only allowed to be, you allow yourself to be really depressed for a day. Like, give yourself a day, because you are allowed to mourn, but then start something new right away. That'll always pick up your spirits, just because hope is the best thing. So that's our best advice. I don't know how.
Yeah, one of the funnier analogies I've heard from a writer buddy was that projects are like having foster kids. Like, you have to love them with all your heart, and then you have to let them go. And like, it was so true. It's like you just have to give it everything you've got, and then when it moves on to a new home, it's like,
That's awesome.
Yeah, totally. Right. Now I love this one.
This is the saddest panel.
No, here's something positive. The no's don't matter. I mean, one yes is all you need. So when someone says no to something, they're wrong. You just keep moving on. I mean, it really is a business where every success you can think of was, Harry Potter was rejected by 17 publishers, and they are all idiots. But it's true. It's one yes is all you're chasing. So the no's really are you're just marking time till you get to the yes.
And you learn so much when you're developing those things that get rejected, that then you end up porting into some other project you're working on 5 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one last thing on that is just, there's a saying that I use, or will echo a lot, is work begets work. So even if you've worked for months on a pitch, and that pitch does not sell, there's a very good chance that you've worked for months on it because someone in that process likes you, and they will bring you back. So you have to understand that one thing is ending, but another opportunity will likely open from it.
it's a little bit of a balance between, you do have to have an almost insane overconfidence that everyone else is wrong and you're right, but at the same time being open to suggestions, and somebody will say something, even the stupidest person you've met with in all your travels might say something that triggers something that, like, that's actually right, and then you can improve it, and then it'll be even better the next time you work on it.
Thank you all.
Yeah.